listening to the Around the Lens podcast, the home of high-quality, roundtable, visual journalism discussion about the news, topics, and gear related to our career field. Now, here's the host of our show, David J. Murphy.
Hello. Hello and welcome to Around the Lens, episode 199. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. Joining me, as always, are my co-hosts, Ron Hamilton and Evelyn Hochstein. Hello, co-hosts.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. How are y'all doing today?
Pretty good. Busy weekend in D.C. I don't know about it in the Philippines.
Busy night in the Philippines.
Ooh. Yeah. What's going on your night in the Philippines, Ron? What are you doing at night?
Doing Around the Lens, Dave.
Yeah, okay. Besides that, what are you doing in the Philippines, by the way? First off, I don't think we talked about this last week.
No, I wasn't here last week. Or I tried to be, but my internet was so terrible. Right. Today I have Wi-Fi and we have a good connectivity and we can actually talk. Mostly it's a vacation, but it's also a working vacation.
Okay.
So I'll be on live the other day. I'll give you a link to the live when I do the news. I think it's Wednesday night. I'm doing the news live out here in the studio. And then I'm meeting a lot of my students out here. Physically, I don't get to see them very often because I'm not here that often. And they're all getting a lot of goodies. I'm unveiling my Canon supplies. So they're getting all my old Canon gear. And I'm going to change to a new system, which will be announced in the future.
Ooh, exciting. So you're down there for work and also for some vacay, which is great. How long are you down there for?
Yeah. I'll be leaving next Sunday. Okay. So next Monday, I'll be back in Hawaii at 2 a.m. On the show.
Okay, you get spoiled by being in Philippines because you're only 1 hour time zone from me. Of course, you know, the time just changed if you're in the United States, or I don't know where else time changes, actually. I'm learning this now for the first time. Korea does not honor the daylight savings time. So now all my contacts who I have to, keep in touch with, it's an hour more back. So it's a 14-hour time difference, which makes doing this show a lot of fun because now it's even later for me here. But, I do what I can. I do what I have to for the show. It's interesting. So Philippines doesn't do daylight savings either, right, Ron?
No, Philippines does not, neither does Hawaii.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay, interesting. Yeah. I should look at...
Most of Arizona doesn't.
Oh, really? I should look in to see which place, because daylight savings. Do you think it's outdated? Do you think it's necessary anymore? Do you think we just abolish it?
You know what I'd like, Dave? I would like a universal time. Let's say UTC.
Ooh, okay.
And everybody's on UTC, and you just know at 2 a.m. you're on the show. Doesn't matter what 2 a.m. is, if it's bright and sunny or if it's dark in the middle of the night. 2 a.m., that's when the show starts.
Well, it's kind of like China. China doesn't have time zones. It's the same exact time from one coast to the other side.
Wow, that's awesome.
So, you could be like 5 a.m. and be broad daylight or something. I don't know.
Okay, whatever.
Anyways.
Really? That's kind of amazing.
It is, yeah.
I didn't know that.
It
is really busy.
It's pretty rough if you're in an area that doesn't account for it very well.
I was in Tennessee recently, and they have like 2 time zones in the same state. Yeah. Not only Tennessee has that, but it's like super confusing if you're going, if you're in one town and you have to go 30 miles away, and then you're in another town, it's a different time. And I remember when I was based in Jerusalem, the Palestinian Authority didn't use daylight savings. So you'd be like back and forth between Israel and the Palestinian Authority and territories and 2 different times. So it was a little confusing when you had to set up an interview or something in one place or the other.
Indeed. Evelyn, you've had a pretty big, busy week.
Very busy week. So much fun. Okay, the Nats, yay, we won the World Series. So that was amazing. I covered the, when we won the World Series, I was out with the crowds outside of Nats Park and in a bar called the Bullpen, which was quite a scene. Everybody was drenched. It was pouring rain all night. Everybody was partying pretty hard, celebrating pretty hard. So that was a blast. I had one camera go on the fritz and I couldn't file. But other than that, it was very celebratory and fun. And then Saturday we had our parade, which was great.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Hey, can you guys hear me? Because I'm getting weird Skype messages saying I'm not here.
I can hear you.
Your voice is coming in.
You're coming in fine. Your video is just frozen. Okay. There we go. Now you're...
Okay, there. Hi. Okay.
All right, Evelyn in motion.
Yeah, so it was great. And I covered the Mark Twain Prize for Comedy at the Kennedy Center. That was just a red carpet, but it was pretty fun to see all the celebrities go by and Dave Chappelle. So Busy week in DC.
What is a victory parade, anyways? Like, I've never been to one of those. Is it just the players going down ticker tape parade in the center of Main Street or something, or what is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I really didn't know. I was like, Evelyn, you're going to be on this riser, go hold up this position. And I actually thought I was going to be locked into that position, which is usually the case. And I think maybe because the parade was organized last minute, but I had free access to roam up and down Pennsylvania Avenue for the most part. So the parade basically was about 12 double-decker buses with the Nats players on top of the buses spread out, and then different little league teams and some marching bands, and everybody just makes their way from like Independence Avenue down to Pennsylvania Avenue and stops in front of the Capitol, and there's a big stage and fans line the streets and got to see all the players. It's a very intimate and close feel. And ticker tape. There were a lot of beer cans flying through the air. I actually got hit with a beer can. Luckily, I was shooting and it hit my lens.
Oh, wow.
And my lens was fine. I was actually kind of glad it didn't hit my head. It was a blast. Yeah, it was. That's the parade. So the players were having a blast and cheering and throwing baseballs. It was great.
That's nice. And
a lot of joy.
That's why your camera's on the fritz, because the beer cans hitting your camera. You're in the lens.
Yeah, right. It's nice to cover when there are that many people in the streets and it's not a protest and it's a parade. It's a nice feeling these days, I have to say. Really nice feeling.
Cool. And I'm sure in Houston they had a pity party parade. I don't know what the losing team does. Probably nothing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just be like, look at the tapes. Be like, how can we do better next time? Anyways, well, we've got a great show for you all tonight. So we got 3 awesome topics lined up here. So let's just jump into our first topic. Hopefully this works. Okay, great, it does. All right, so this is a story about a veteran photographer by the name of David S. Holloway, who was basically caught stealing equipment from a studio, kind of that he co-working space studio. David Scott Holloway has been in the industry for quite a long time. He was actually working on as a photographer for the show with Anthony Bourdain, where he was traveling around the world and he was his photographer. I actually got to interview David for a segment that was featured on our YouTube channel. Where he was at Focus on the Story 2019, so he took some time out to talk to me after his speech during the show. And so get to know a little about him. I thought he was for my one interaction with it seemed like an okay fella for my perspective. But again, of course, this whole incident sort of can color your opinion of him. I think probably not obviously in the positive light. He did admit to stealing, apparently, according to some of the posts on social media that he made. And as soon as he's able to, we're going to have him on the show and kind of talk about, why he did this and what's sort of his side of the story. But, again, I mean, regardless, in general, you probably don't want to steal camera equipment, especially from other photographers or anyone ever. But, again, I think it's pretty egregious to take it from other photographers who you need to use that stuff to make that their livelihood. But I'll throw it to you all. What do you think about this? You have some pretty...
This story, sorry.
No, go ahead.
First of all, I just read, you shared it and we're going to talk about it. So I watched the video that you did with this guy and I thought, wow, what an amazing career. He's photographing all these celebrities. He does an amazing job with Anthony Bourdain, talented. And then I watch this basically dumbass surveillance video of him breaking into the studio and thinking, okay, besides the stealing, first of all, how did he think he would get away with something like that? I mean, we don't live in a world where there aren't video cameras, right. And he's wearing his hoodie and, he's got his face covered, but he's pretty recognizable. So there was that just seemed beyond, it just seems stupid, frankly. I was really shocked. I thought it was just, really disappointing. I don't know if you could get back into the industry after doing something like that. Would you want to work with someone like that? Your trust is totally broken. And why? Like, what made him need to go steal this equipment is really, and I think what was so fascinating was the studio that had everything ripped off basically said, other photographers stepped in and helped us out and lent us gear. So if you're in that position, it kind of shows if you're not a total jerk, maybe your colleagues would help you out and hook you up, right?
Right.
I mean, I certainly do that. I did that the other night. I had a photographer on the red carpet at Kennedy Center. he didn't have a wide angle lens. He just brought a 135 fix thinking it was
Oh.
his like 24-70. And I happened to have another wide angle in my bag. And, he's competition, but here you go. Use this because it's karma, right?
Sure.
It's going to come back.
Eventually, you're going to be in a spot one day
Anyway.
where you need help, and you're going to want help from somebody. So
Yeah. But stealing that, I don't know. It blew my mind. I thought it was reprehensible personally.
Ron?
Yeah, I've had my gear stolen. I've had my car smashed and all of my gear stolen right after I got laid off from the paper. So it was a double whammy. For like a week later, I got laid off, and a week later, all my stuff got stolen. I was really, really, really mad. If I would have found the guy who stole my stuff, I wouldn't be on the show today. I'd be somewhere
Live from prison is Ron Hamilton.
Exactly. So
I've had a lot of gear stolen. Yeah, it's painful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What a horrible thing to happen to you.
Yeah.
So when I first read this story, I thought, oh boy, this boy is so lucky it wasn't me that got stolen. If I would have found out who stole my stuff, oh boy, there'd be pressing concerns, pressing
Charges,
pressing things, other things. Maybe that might be the least of the pressing things. Anyway, but I read the comments in the Petapixel, and this guy stole from me in 2001, and yeah, this guy is bad news, and all these things. But I always come back whenever somebody screws something up. I always think to myself, I don't think there's anything you can't come back from. I think there should be a path to redemption for everybody.
Right.
I just don't know what it's going to take for this. This is a rough one. This is really rough. However, I'm open to hear his side of the story, and maybe some of these, it's a 2001 story, whatever it was not true. I don't know. Let's see what he has to say. But yeah, getting stolen from is a horrible thing. If you would have said, this guy, he was inappropriate with the model. He had a bad day. Right? Oh, this guy, this and that and the other. Oh, well, people are weird. But when you say, he stole something, that's a rough one. That's a real rough one.
Yeah, it's.
I think inappropriate with a model is a rough one too. Probably hard to come back from this day and age. Fortunately, like we used to brush those things off, and now I think we have some more perspective. I mean, not saying that there are different interpretations, but yeah, I think people deserve redemption. It doesn't have to be like Jean Valjean and Javert's chasing. You can steal something, and maybe there's a reason, and maybe he can come explain himself, but. I don't know. Is he? I feel like he's going to say it was because of the security deposit or whatever story. Yeah. But it just looked. Yeah, I don't know. It was. Yeah, it was pretty blatant. I mean, it wasn't. It was blatant. I mean, you see it all on camera. But I'd love to know his reasons. Yeah, and then he has a pattern of it. I didn't see the thing about 2001, so.
I might have the year wrong, but if something like that.
Whatever the year, but I don't know. What do you?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely want to talk to him about that, because those are like older, anecdotal type accounts and whatnot. I mean, if this is the case, then obviously that's sad. It's obviously showing a pattern, but it's something to when you talk about the redemption, right? We talk about going back from things. I think from the larger scheme of things, I think he as a photographer can come back because if I'm a photo buyer, if I'm someone who's getting work from perhaps a website, is his name going to be tarnished from my perspective? Right. No, I might be looking for photos that he is shooting, and he shoots not just the celebrity stuff, but also he does his side stories and whatnot. Right. So I think there's a lot of people who've done things wrong in their lives. I mean, look at celebrities, right? Every day there's a new celebrity who does something wrong, and they come back and have their comeback story. So I don't think that, this is something that I think if he had done like photo manipulation, that would be more egregious within our industry because that puts his work in the spotlight. This has nothing to do with his work. This is just his character. Yeah. Now, if would I trust him alone with my gear? That's something I'd have to take into consideration because of what has happened, But if there's sort of like an ownership of this, and whatnot, which, he did confess to what he did to the detectives, according to this story. So, if there's an ownership of it and, there's some sort of like, okay, I won't do it again type thing, then perhaps. But again, I have a tough time trusting my gear with anyone really, besides myself and my family, just because it's a lot of gear. It's very expensive. Thankfully, I've never had gear directly stolen from me. I've known people who've had their gear stolen. It's not a fun time. It costs a lot of money, especially if you have to pay it back. I've lost things that probably may have been stolen. I don't know. I've had like a flash or something that I had one time and then I didn't have it anymore. I was in an airport actually in Puerto Rico as I was leaving Puerto Rico after covering the hurricane, and I had my camera bag with two GH5s or like a G8, I had two GH5s, an entire kit, multiple lenses, everything, all my camera kit, and I left it at the scanning area. So you had to stick all your gear through a detector. And then I had like 4 or 5 bags with me, right? So I was like just overwhelmed. And I was trying to get out of there. I've been in Puerto Rico for 2 weeks and there was a flight available. So I was just trying to get on my flight. And my mind was not in the right place. And I put this bag through and I got all my other bags. I went to the line to go check in. And as I was waiting in line, I had the realization that I left my bag there. And then I ran back over there and the bag wasn't there. And I was like, oh no, this is like $10,000-$20,000 worth of gear in my entire camera bag. But thankfully, someone found it, and of course, they did the right thing, and I got it back. And so, crisis averted. But that was probably the closest to losing everything that I had, and I can't imagine how someone would feel if they lost their entire kit. Because then it's like, what can you do? I mean, Evelyn, you're a freelancer. Nobody's gonna step in and get you gear. I mean, maybe you do have a friend network that'll come to your aid if you put out there something online. But if you got to go do a shoot the next day and you don't have your gear, what are you going to do? I mean, you head into the store, right? And you're getting something, put it on credit card. I don't know. I mean, how are you managing that? Do you have backup equipment in the house, or is everything with you at all times?
I have a bunch of old cameras, so I could pick up like an old 5D Mark III. They work fine. Or I probably have a 5D Mark II sitting around that I tried to sell and nobody ever wanted to buy. So I think I'd be okay. I do have a good network here in DC. I think if I were to turn to women photojournalists of Washington or friends and say, hey, I need to borrow a lens, I have a shoot, we would all step up. Because we had one of our members had a bag lost. She checked it on United, or they made her check it. They made her gate check it, as you're boarding, and forced her to gate check it, and then her bag disappeared. And anyway, she ended up getting it back. It was a big to do, and it was really great because Think Tank Center knew it got some media coverage. But I know the community stepped up. But that's the same with this photographer. If he can maybe come back from this if he's liked and people respect him, and people can like maybe hear his side of the story or overlook it. I don't know what his sorry, that's my dog. I don't know what his story is in the photo community, because I think that'll make or break him if he tries to come back and get jobs. Because who's going to want to work with somebody unless there's a redemptive quality to him, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's a nice guy. Like I said, when I met him, he had a very good personality, very friendly. So, I mean, you can ride on that. And, I do wonder if this is going to result in some sort of, jail time or some sort of...
I think he made a deal, right? Didn't it sound like
he said he had lesser charges, so perhaps he was able to maybe get from a felony down to a misdemeanor. Because I mean, if we're talking $10,000 to $15,000 worth of gear, I don't know exactly the laws, but I believe that's a felony theft. But I don't know. Yeah. So perhaps by turning it in, you can get like a misdemeanor or something like that, maybe community service. I don't know. Because I know, like, that's probably the harder thing to come back from, of having like a criminal record, because that's something you have to talk about when you go like apply for jobs and stuff like that. So, being a freelancer, fine, you can get away with a lot doing a freelancer, I guess. But somebody who wants to like try and work for CNN, they're gonna look at back at your, they're gonna look at your past and make sure they're not associating someone who might have some. How do you say, some dirt on them associated with CNN, because that's what people like to do, just try and find something they can pull on CNN or some other network, food network. But anyways,
another thing about back to the gear getting stolen. You're saying about the credit. I mean, sure, you can put it on a credit card, but I think another good point is if you're a Nikon or Canon shooter, I can't speak to the other brands, but I'm sure it applies to Sony, Fuji, whatever. if you're a member of their professional services and you get to know their reps, when something crappy happens to you and your equipment fails, you can turn to them and they will help you if they know you and you have a relationship with them and you're a professional photographer. I think, you know, if my gear got stolen and I said to Canon, hey, I need to borrow stuff for a week, I would hope that they would help me out.
Right.
Just being a member of CPS.
Sure.
But I think any member could get that, but get things a little bit expedited if you get to know your local reps. That's always a good idea, good move.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one thing to do is this is a good reminder that if you have a lot of gear, get insurance on it. Get insurance for theft or breakage or anything like that, because that's going to help you, you know, at least in the long run, hopefully maybe get some money back.
I'd like to talk about, maybe you've talked about it on an episode, but I've always weighed the pros and cons, and it's never really paid, for me, it doesn't seem to pay off, but we can talk about that another episode.
Yeah, and marine policy, it costs quite a bit.
Does it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Google.
Well, I mean, I've always heard, like, you can add it to your homeowner's insurance. That's a thing?
Yeah, but it's not inland
separate.
marine. It's not a replacement cost. It's not a replacement value in that case. It's what they think the value is.
Well, how much is a marine policy?
Inland marine? Well, we can Google. I'm going to Google. Hang on.
If only there was some way to find out information
marine
on the internet.
Insurance.
I've looked through NPPA and I have yet to really see it pay off. Because the premiums were pretty high.
Right.
So I feel like if I can get my gear to last a couple years, then it sort of outweighs the benefits. I mean, hopefully nothing. If things were getting stolen every year, I suppose that it would.
I guess depends on where you live and whatnot, and the overall crime rate. I think if it happened to you once, you'd probably be. It kind of like, you know, it's like if you get robbed, then you're more inclined to want to buy like a weapon, like, or if you get like robbed at gunpoint or something like that, if you had an interaction with a weapon, because like I personally wouldn't want to buy, you know, I have no desire to buy a weapon, but I know if like I had an interaction with someone and they pointed a weapon at me, you know, I might be inclined to then want a weapon. But
I've had a weapon pointed at me and my gear stolen.
Wow.
And I still didn't have a weapon and I didn't get insurance.
Wow, okay.
So I don't know. Yeah. Well, that's another story for another
Oh my
day.
goodness. All right. Well, we'll save that story for another day when we're talking maybe about getting robbed or something like that when that comes up.
Sure.
Getting your gear stolen at gunpoint or something like that. That's an interesting story. Let's move on to our second topic this evening. We are talking about art and photojournalism. And so this was a story you brought up to me, Ron. I thought it was pretty interesting. Basically, you know, how do we be objective as photojournalists when we have full sort of creative control with regard to how we frame our work and whatnot. And I thought there was an interesting sort of case study here with politicians. Essentially, you know, for the most part, they know how to spin their own image, and they're creating photo opportunities for you as a photographer, videographer, or whatnot. So how do you sort of balance this sort of stage scene, if you will, with also trying to do your job as sort of an objective viewer? So let me throw it to you, Ron, first. What do you think of this story?
Yeah, the idea being is that we encounter so many things in the industry where you're put in a situation where it's much easier to stage something than it would be to and people, you know, when you pull a camera out, people jump in front of it and assemble anyway. So it's kind of like you're not really staging it, but kind of you are. By your presence, something like that.
Well, sure, people react to you, but you have to get, you know, that's the nature of photography, right? Or having a camera out there, people are gonna be like, okay, cheese, you know, and then they eventually be like, oh, guys, I'm not okay. All right, I took your one shot. Okay, good. Keep on going, doing what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And then you got to get them to do that as well. Exactly.
Right.
They don't understand. I've had several times where you pull the camera out and people start making faces or whatever, and that's kind of what they do.
You know, Evelyn, you being in the heart of DC and politics and politicians, you know, people who are probably hyper aware of the fact that they're going to be on camera and what they say and do will be, you know, in the press and the media the next day. Have you had that experience or had sort of, I guess, staged photo shoots? I mean, you know, now I think about it, what is the biggest stage thing that we've covered here, or that has been in DC, was that press conference, and then the stage, the storming of the skiff, right? That was a whole big staged opportunity to get attention for, a topic, right?
Wait, I'm so what press conference?
So it was like a week or so ago, I think, and the Republican House members had their little press conference outside the skiff. Right. They're like, okay, I guess we're gonna go inside the skiff now, and then they all stormed the skiff, even though half of them could go in there, were allowed in there. It was just a big stunt, So it's it's designed to get a rise out of people, and it's a staged photo opportunity. So is there sort of a, how do you say, any qualms about shooting something that's obviously a staged photo opportunity? Is there some sort of caveat that maybe should be presented in the caption or in the way that imagery is presented, or is it just
Well, the irony of something like that is that sort of is real politics.
Okay.
Even though it's staged and we went and we stormed something, or we're going to set up, we're there to capture, this is how politics are being done, this is how they're being conducted, this is how we're going to get our point of view across. So in a way, it's knowing that you have the media there ready to capture this, and then you go out and you put on a performance. So it is political theater, right? But at the same time, there is some reality to that. Like, it was a Republican protest of the closed door impeachment hearings. So that's the way they were going to handle it. And that had an impact on politics. So then therefore that had to be covered. And at the same time, like, I photographed an environmental protest where people glued themselves to the doors of, like, the passageway from, like, the house tunnels into the Capitol. That's also political theater, right? That's set up knowing that you're going to be glued to a wall. Politicians aren't going to be able to get through. The photographers are going to go crazy. And is it fake or is it real? Well, I think that things like that are real. I think setting something up or saying, okay, Republican Congress people, you've gone and done this. Now stand in this room for me and let me get a group shot. That would be staging.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's a comedy, it's a circus, and, knowing how to just sort of let it unfold in front of you and knowing that it's being done for you. It's like if the tree falls in the forest, right? You're there. Did it happen or did so? You just let it unfold. And I think another way to cover those things is to step back sometimes and get the whole media circus, get a different angle, or, look at it from the side view, and that sort of conveys what's happening. But it is reality in a way. So I don't have a problem with stuff like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's happening in front of you. You're not staging it. You're not manipulating it. It's just what people are doing. Yes, maybe they have an agenda and what they're doing, and you're sort of part of that agenda because they know what they're doing will gather attention. I wonder, though, if that press conference was sort of promoted to the media. It was like, okay, we're going to have a press conference and then we're going to storm the skiff, or it was just like, we're going to have a press conference, talk about something, and then they did the stunt immediately afterwards because they knew they had the media there. I wonder if the media knew it was going to be a circus in what they were doing, would they have still have covered it to the degree they did? And based on your comments, it sounds like yes, they would, because regardless of what they're doing, it's how things are done, and ultimately you're going to catch the show because no media entity would not want to have their opportunity to catch that because that's going to be top of the news. So,
I don't know if that's any different than sitting down and stopping traffic or really doing any sort of media grabbing stunt, right? Because we exist. Sure. People are then going to do crazy things. And does that take away from, it's a way of getting your message across. And I guess we can look at it as being brave or being a stunt or being outlandish or being manipulative. You can look at it from all of those perspectives, depending on the event.
Is there a instance where someone trying to pull a media stunt, like you would say, like, okay, this is obviously a stunt. I won't be a party to this. I will not be the person to carry their water because, one reason or another, I don't believe in what they're sort of espousing or whatnot. They're doing this just for attention, and it's obvious. is there ever an instance maybe you've experienced or you think you could experience where you might say, I'm not going to bother with this because what they're doing is obviously a stunt designed to gather attention, and I won't be the one to help propagate their message?
I mean, I think we see that a lot. I think we saw that like right after Charlottesville in Boston, there was the free speech rally, and I think about 10 people came, but about 50,000 protesters came to protest the 10 people for the free speech rally. Mm-hmm. And I think that was their attempt, and the media, the focus then shifted away from those people and into the counter protesters.
Or they focused on how few people showed up to the the one rally.
Yeah, and I think we see what you're saying to should we participate, like Unite the Right 2 in Washington, where Jason Kessler, right? Yeah, he came to DC and he only had about 10 people, but the amount of money, media expense that went into following him on the metro, guarding him, getting to the parade site, and then you have all these other protesters there. Should we participate in that? Are we calling attention to his 10 people that have shown up in DC and are costing the city and police, millions of dollars? So that's a very fair question, but we also don't want to miss it as the media either. And I think it's important to show the counter protesters. So I get it. I don't want to give credence to these very small things that are happening, but at the same time, it's worth covering the counteraction to these protests.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the other
or these actions.
Right. And the other point of this story was about how the photojournalist, and this kind of goes more to the art side of it, can essentially affect coverage by the way they frame the image or tilt the image or whatnot. Here, this part of the story where it's like, but not all political figures are as fortunate as O'Rourke and Obama in a viral moment from the Democrat primary debate this July. Presidential hopeful Marianne Williamson condemned dark psychic forces. Shortly thereafter, an image by Brendan Smolowski. Hey, Ron, get this guy on the show.
Smolowski, yeah.
I should know that. I should know how to say this. I am Polish, but of a wide-eyed Williamson, head cocked, bomb teeth, jud forward, quickly circulated. So, again, here is an image that is artistically designed to portray a sort of idea that is, again, propagated by the person themselves. Ron, what do you think about this? Is this something you've ever done in the way you've covered anything, or do you just kind of cover things flatly?
Honestly, yeah. Yeah, I try not to. I mean, I want to make good photographs. That's my thing. I want to make good photographs. If it makes them look good, great. It's not my agenda. I'm trying to make good photographs, while trying to be truthful at the same time. Mm-hmm. But like this one with the Marianne Williamson there, it's a funny photo. if I would have shot that, I probably would have sent it in and said, hey guys, look at this. And if they ran it, I guess it's on them,
What's funny, it's like, I don't know what those are in the foreground, like lights or something like that. Like those are the dark specters, and then of course the image is tilted.
It's a great photo. It's a great photo. It's got a lot going on there.
But then I thought about it. It's like we as photojournalists, we go out to these shoots, and it's like we are, by the nature of the job, having to find interesting, unusual, or creative ways to cover a topic, especially if it's the same thing over and over again. So to cover something where you put somebody in the corner of the frame, or this photographer we were talking about before who shoots everything with like high-end flash or something like that, that's just a kind of another way to cover it in creative ways. And if people want to use it for their own devices, I guess they can. I mean, anyone can crop any image you shoot, Evelyn, any way they want, pretty much, right? Once they take it off the wire, there's no restrictions in how they use the image, right?
No, none at all.
But have you yourself ever, I don't know, put any sort of spin in any of the way, like you cover? I mean, you're covering something, you're covering it honestly and whatnot, but have you taken any creative liberties yourself when you're trying to frame a subject? To necessarily portray something, or maybe even subconsciously? Have you ever done that, do you think?
I wouldn't say creative liberties. I would say maybe using creativity, because sure, you're going to want to try to come up, if you're covering a politician or a rally or something, you're going to want to shoot through something, or you're definitely going to use your creativity. And that's not going to be a straightforward standing on a platform, just taking a direct shot of what's in front of you. But that's not what we're necessarily doing as photojournalists. So trying to be fair, trying to be balanced, and not having a bent, you can still use creativity to portray a mood.
Sure.
So, like, let's say I'm photographing a Trump rally and I'm photographing the people and they come out looking a certain way. Perhaps right-wing critics might say, oh, she's from the liberal media, look how she portrayed this people. But I may be feeling in that moment that I'm being very fair and accurate and capturing the energy, the mood, the facial expressions, the zeal, the anger, whatever it may be. Right. So I think I try to be balanced no matter what my personal feelings are, and capture the mood. And I think that I do that equally on both sides, but I think both sides can interpret things the way that they want to. Yeah. And I think the thing is that we live in an era now where we do have very rambunctious, boisterous political events, even more so than in the past. And people are really wearing their colors on their sleeves, and gear and T-shirts and slogans that are at a different level maybe than they were in the past. So we have an opportunity to portray that. And I think it can be perceived as being that you're biased one side or the other, but you're really just going in there and showing things as they are. Right. So, yeah. But sometimes I think, yeah, go ahead, Ron.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You think?
No, I was going back to the creativity thing. I think you've got to be creative. You've got to be artistic. You've got to shoot things and use light or use expressions, or you get super tight or whatever it may be, whatever your technique is. But you can't just go shoot a rally on the stage. I mean, right. You wouldn't be a very successful photojournalist if that was what you were doing.
Yeah, it's like Zach has talked about how his imagery has been used both, in causes that he believes in, and also things he doesn't believe in, or, against, to kind of fight his own argument in terms of white supremacy and whatnot. He's had his own imagery that depicts obvious, racism and whatnot used in the anti version of what he's trying to get across. And it's the same thing with, like, you're covering something, someone might use your shot of a Democrat and use that against the Democrats, or vice versa for the Republicans or whatnot. So it's like you kind of put your stuff out there and you shoot it the way you're going to shoot it. And like with talking about shooting someone standing at a podium, yeah, it's like I'm going to get, the standard shots, the 3/4 view, the, rule of thirds, use all the thing, get the standard shots. And then I'm going to start looking for creative shots. Like, let me get down low. Let me put some things in the foreground. Let me shoot through some people. Let me shoot through some objects. And then, if somebody goes on there and be like, oh, wow, I could use that to represent them as a nut job because, they said something about dark psychics. Like, okay, great. Let me use that image in an editorial way and whatnot. So I'm sure there's probably about, 200 or 300 photos of Marianne Williamson on, the various, distribution sites from this one event. But this is how, one publication decided to use that imagery to help tell that story.
Well, I'd like to ask Brendan too. Was that his intention, or is that just something he uploaded and they took it like that because this maybe it was somebody else's decision? Maybe it wasn't him.
We're gonna ask Brendan in person when he comes on the show, right, Ron?
I'll ask him. They do it right now, Dave. Hang on.
No, I'm just kidding. So anyways, lots of interesting stuff there. So anything else anyone would like to say before we move on to the next topic?
What Evelyn was talking about earlier about people leaving their on their sleeve, wearing their agenda on their sleeves.
Right.
I was going to say is that it's not only the protesters or the participants in rallies, whatever. Sometimes it's members of the media.
Sure.
Doing the same thing.
100%.
Not something I do, but I have seen it. So.
I'm just looking at the photograph of the person wearing the Trump mask at the rally from 2016.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
Yeah, there you go. That's just somebody capturing what they see at a rally, and then like, okay.
Well, yeah. Is
there an agenda there? Anyways, all right, well, let's go ahead and move on to our last topic this evening, or morning, is gear. So we had some gear that was announced or came out here in the past week or so. First thing I want to talk about is the Mavic Mini. So this is a new drone from DJI in their Mavic line. This is the smallest one that they've come out with. It's coming in at 249 grams, so just under the FAA's requirement to register. So if you're looking to fly a drone without as much headache and red tape, this could be the one that is for you. It seems like a pretty nice piece of kit. You know, I could definitely see this being something maybe perhaps added to my gear bag. It's smaller. It's as small as a iPhone 11 Pro in terms of its just overall footprint, and then obviously thicker than that. You know, Ron, you're somebody who likes gear. So what do you think about this Mavic Mini? Is this something you would you think about adding to your roster of gear?
You know, again, I've always said since we started the show that, you know, drones are, you know, hard to fly. You get these restrictions. You can't fly over here and there. And I live on an island where everything is 3 miles from an airport, so I don't think I'd ever be able to fly it. People do fly them here. I don't know what the rules are. I don't understand. But this one is small and tiny, and gosh, it's so cute. Wouldn't this be the greatest thing to just carry around with you and just kind of send it up and get a shot, you know, and put it back in your pocket before anybody knows what's going on? Plus, it's 249 grams below the 250 gram limit to register with the FAA. So it seems like a cute little thing to have. And the price is definitely right?
Yeah, $400.
Yeah, who ain't got that, right? I got that on me right now.
Makes them practically disposable.
Yeah, which I think would be disposable if I bought one. That's what's holding me back. I think I would go ahead and wreck it. And
well, of course.
So if it's under the weight limit, does that mean you can fly? I don't know about DC. Like, you can't fly anything around here.
So what I've been told is basically it's still the same regulations that affect flying a drone that's above its weight class. You know, the only difference is you don't have to register it. You don't have to associate the serial number of the drone to you. So if you bought this, went to a Best Buy and bought this and, you know, flew it up in the air and the cops confiscated it because it wasn't supposed to be flown or was no fly zone. In theory, I guess they couldn't, identify it to you if you paid for it with cash and if there were no fingerprints on it. You know, I'm not trying to give criminals any ideas here, but again, that's kind of like the idea. So you still shouldn't fly it in sort of no-fly zones, and DJI is pretty good about putting that kind of information into their sort of GPS tracking. So it's like if you were in a no-fly zone, like the majority of DC is, then you can't, even take off with it. So I don't know how, obviously viable would be for someone like you, Evelyn, who works in DC, but obviously when I was there, I had to go pretty far out to fly my drone. I found one spot where, you could fly drones pretty much, but yeah, that whole DC area is surrounded by a 5 mile radius circle. So it's tough.
Okay.
Is this something?
But I wonder, just to get up, 10 feet in the air or something like that.
Sure.
Depends who's around.
Yeah, I mean, you might be. I mean, considering how small this is, how quick it is to set up, maybe get in the air, perhaps. But I would probably not fly it still in the DC area because they're super. They see something like that happening, you're probably gonna get tackled or something like that. I can't imagine. Nowhere near the White House, that's for sure. Maybe on the outskirts, perhaps, of the circle, if I'm feeling a bit brave. But again, for you, Evelyn, obviously you're in the DC area. Do you think any kind of drone work will ever be in your future?
No, not in DC, but certainly, Maryland, Virginia. So I'm not, like I said to you, I mean, I'm not such a techie. I would love to try to use a drone. Mm-hmm. I haven't done it yet, but definitely it's on my list. So yes, I think I have the opportunity to use it in this area, just not obviously anything to do with politics.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a great sort of introductory drone. If you're new to this is the best way, I think, to get in there because it's a great drone for the great price, and it really sort of gets the idea of what a drone can do. So, I mean, if you were ever looking to get into it, I would definitely highly recommend trying this one out because it's a very low sort of barrier to entry, And then if you do like it, you can always upgrade to more the Mavic Pro or the Mavic Pro 2 or any of these other ones that shoot higher higher resolution video and stills and whatnot. It can still shoot 12 megapixel stills, so I mean, it's not bad. You know.
Yeah, I'm Googling it right now. Looks fun.
2.7 K video and 30-minute flight time. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's actually it's more than my Mavic Pro, that's for sure. And that's just so small, you know. And I was looking up rules here in Korea because I figured, you know, Korea was going to be like Japan. I recently went to Japan, and the first thing you see as soon as you enter the country in the airport is no drones allowed. So they're already dealing with that. And I don't know if that's necessarily like the entire country is a no drone zone, or they just don't want tourists coming in and flying their drones all over the place. I'm glad I didn't bring my drone, but you know, with something like this and being Korea has a bit more lax rules. I mean, you still have to be outside of the realm of like airports and different military bases and stuff. But, you know, I could definitely see myself taking this to, you know, Busan or other areas, you know, that aren't Seoul where, you know, it's kind of more, you know, more easy to fly, you know. I have seen drones about and about at other events I've been to. And I'm like, always like, I wonder if they had to get like some sort of certification. But no, pretty much, you know, as long as you're not flying around an airport, you're pretty much good. So,
yeah, I see drones flying around Hawaii from time to time, and I just assume they're illegal.
Is there nowhere in Hawaii you can fly a drone? Is it completely?
I don't know. I don't know the rules. It isn't 3 miles from the airport. Isn't that correct?
I don't know.
Something like
I don't know. I thought it was 5
miles. 3 miles from the airport. You can whatever it is, but you can. Well, maybe it might be 5. In which case, it's harder in Hawaii to get 5 miles from the airport. But
I'm sure there's like one spot in Hawaii where you can fly.
Around. Yeah, one park.
Yeah.
Where I go, where all the drones are at, and I see that. I think you're not supposed to fly over people. Isn't that one of the rules?
Right, over people or.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen a lot of stuff. So, I don't know what's legal and what isn't. So I just ignore it. So, as long as they don't hit me with it, I don't really care.
Yeah.
I'm just not gonna do it myself. Is the point.
No, I mean, it's, you know, as great as drones are and as accessible and whatnot and inexpensive, honestly, I've had my drone for probably about, I think, two or so years now, and I can probably count the amount of times I've taken it out to fly it on 2 hands, you know? So it's not like something I'm flying consistently. So am I getting the most out of it? I don't know. I'd love to use it more. Actually, this past May recently when I was doing some shooting with it, for my camera bag review, which you can find on our website and our YouTube channel, I just kept on running into a lot of technical issues with it. It kept on losing signal, so I don't know if maybe there's something wrong with it or whatnot, but I was having tons of trouble with it. So stuff like that is really easy. It really makes not wanting to use the drone, like it makes it that much more difficult to want to use the drone when you're having technical issues, because you only have, like, at least with the Mavic Pro, you got like 20-25 minutes max with it. So if as soon as it starts like having technical issues or it doesn't detect your remote control, there goes half your battery life because you're trying to get it back. And it was kind of a nightmare because I'd try and fly it and then it would lose connection and want to come back. So nothing bad saying about DJI or their equipment, but again, those are my personal experiences with the drone. Don't let that shade your opinion, Evelyn. I still think the DJI Mavic Mini would be a good introductory drone for you.
I can definitely see times when having a drone, or times in my past, would have been great, where I rented a plane, for example, to get aerial shots and things like that. So I could see, and at that price point, it'd be terrific to add it into the kit. Yeah.
Well, even something simple like a group photo. Like I just did a group photo last week, and I had to go get a ladder and stick that thing up. I was like 15 feet up in the air, and you know, obviously I was gonna still shoot it with a regular camera because I wanted I got a 47 megapixel camera I was gonna shoot it with, so I wanted the high resolution. But you know, if a drone were available to me, that would have been an easy way to get the group photo as well. So anyways,
well, I was reading on the internet this weekend about this guy was doing drone, you know, air quotes, drone maneuvers with a GoPro on a long selfie stick, you know, like a painter's
pole.
I
saw that as well.
And he was you see that? Yeah. And I was reading a lot of the comments. People were saying, well, you know, you could take a painter's pole and just raise your GoPro way up high in the sky, and there's your drone shot. You don't have to worry about rules, regulations, or anything.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Well, you know.
Take the monopod and raise up your
Just
camera.
raise it up, and there's your aerial shot.
There was a video I saw came from, I think, Rocket Jump Films or something like that, where they did a sort of GTA 5 in real life, and it looked just like drone footage, but it was really just it was like a GoPro on a gimbal at the end of like a giant long stick. And the way they did the shots, where they followed the car around and followed the person around, that looks just like a drone flying overhead, but it was just a camera on a giant stick. All right, let's move on to our last portion of this. Is the Canon 1DX Mark III was announced or rumored, and we don't really have too many specs on it, but it looks like a pretty neat camera. It's going to be mirrorless, so it's basically Canon's professional mirrorless camera, because the USR is not professional. Anyways, a lot of the information about megapixel count and whatnot, all we pretty much know is that it does exist. And it'll probably be ready for the 2020 Olympics, because this is the kind of camera you take to an Olympics game, because you want all that high shutter speed and whatnot. Evelyn, as our resident Canon user, have you messed with the 1D series at all? Is this a kind of camera body that intrigues you? Or are you happy with the 5D?
It intrigues me. I haven't messed with them because they're just a little out of my price point, I think, as a freelancer.
Right.
So I've always sticked with the Mark 3, 4, that series. So I can't, no, I haven't, but I would love, there are many things that they look like workhorses. They've got faster shutter speed, frames per second, but I haven't used them.
Many years ago, when I first got into freelance photography in New York City, my first Canon camera, that wasn't a Digital Rebel. My first Canon camera was a Digital Rebel, but my first professional Canon camera was the 1D Mark II, I believe. So it wasn't, again, it was great for the time. I think it shot like 12 frames per second or something crazy like that. So it was a workhorse camera. Again, if you're shooting that type of thing, you need that high shutter speed or high frame rate. That's, it's a camera to have for sure.
Yeah, they're just priced, I think, for a freelancer. They're just a little out there.
Excuse me. Are there freelancers you work with who like have extremely expensive gear, and you're like, how are they getting all that expensive gear? How can they afford that?
Yeah, I see guys with the long lenses, and if they work for a wire service, I guess it pays off eventually. But I'm really happy. Look, the 5D Mark IVs are expensive, I think. But what are you going to do? So that's what I'm up to.
If you work for a wire service, are you freelance? Are you a staff? Are you not considered like a staffer for that wire service, or how does that work exactly? Is that just basically on a contract period or a contract basis, or?
I'm not shooting for the wires now, but I think a lot of the people in DC are just straight up freelancers. They get a call, they get paid a day rate, they have their own gear. Okay. Yeah, I don't think they're contractors.
Right. When you say shooting for a wire service, that means that basically you're on call for a wire service, but you're still a freelancer? Sorry. Yeah, that's what I was trying to get clarification on.
Yeah, I was thinking in terms of like gear. Yes, the staff wire photographers, whatever, they have whatever gear they want, right, I suppose. But I see a lot of freelancers who are using, big, 400 millimeter lenses. And I think they're their lenses. I would never want to shell out that much for a lens as a freelancer personally. Right. But again, I've rented stuff. I've said to the client, like, I need to rent this lens for this event. And that's been okay. But those, I think to do that, you probably do. As a freelancer, the onus is on you. You've got to have the gear for the job in a lot of cases. And that's tough. But I hope for them it pays off.
When I was working as a freelancer in the city, I knew people who swore by the 300 f2 or f2.83, 300 prime for Canon, because, again, a lot of the stuff that they were shooting was subjects very far away. And if you can get the subject far away and also get that low aperture, that's what imagery that's sold. So if you can justify it, if that sort of thing, then you can pay it off. But yeah, like I said, if you're a freelancer, you're paying for that yourself. You better hope that you're getting the work that eventually pays that off. That's not like I've got tons of gear, but am I getting paid? Am I making money off that gear? I would say probably not as much as I would like to. So,
yeah.
Well, you have the benefit in the mainland is a lot of rental options. If you
Oh
want
yeah,
to,
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, you can rent. It's worthwhile in some cases. So I've done that. But yeah, the big glass, it might pay off because there've been some times when I'm like, oh, I really needed that 300. At least I could put like an extender on it, and if it was a 2.8 lens, but I could never. Now they're a lot cheaper because there are better lenses out there, so you could probably pick one up a lot cheaper. But yeah, I never bit the bullet, so I just go with my 7200 and my 1.4x extender, make it work.
True, true. Yeah, I've had the 2x extender, but I find that does a bit too much. It makes the image a bit too blurry for my taste.
Yeah.
But yeah,
they're not for sure. But yeah, but there are tons of rental shops. But if you're not in DC or New York, I don't know how you deal with that. But we've got opportunities here to borrow gear. Yeah.
I wonder how much you'd have to shoot to make that $8,000 f.9.95 lens from Nikon. Make that worth it. Be like, sorry, boss. Everything I shoot now is going to be a 50 millimeter, 0.95. I got to use that for everything to make that get the money's worth. That's fine, but they're on a podium and they're half a mile away. So, no, 50 millimeter. That's my thing now. That's my style. 50 millimeter shots of everything.
Everybody wants one. They can't make enough of them to satisfy demand.
Yeah, and absolutely. Evelyn, how do you choose, like, when is the point where you say, like, okay, now's the time to upgrade my gear? As a freelancer, like, is there, like, do you wait till the gear is just personally not meeting your needs? Or do you, like, for instance, you're considering upgrading to mirrorless right now, right? That's obviously going to be an expense for you. But, like, how do you justify that expense as a freelancer?
Well, it is a write-off, so I know it's a business expense, but it's a major investment. So I sort of think like, okay, I have to think in terms of years. Like, am I going to make this transition? It's going to cost X, and I think I think at a certain point you have to upgrade no matter what every 3-4 years. I mean, my equipment is pretty much falling apart and dying by that point. So I think I'm prepared every 3 to 4 years to make the switch. And right now, I think the reason I'm really more interested in switching to mirrorless is because I'm at that lifespan with my 5D Mark IVs and all my lenses. They're just getting to the point where they're going in for repair. They're not as crisp. They're slowing down a little bit. So I'm starting to feel it. So I just think I got to bite the bullet and I got to shell out the money and just do it, and I'll write it off. But it's tough. I don't know how. I mean, I don't know how freelancers do it. It's expensive. You can easily drop 10 grand like that, or you do it piecemeal, or you try to buy it. Like, I know now, I mean, I'd be very happy with a new 5D Mark IV. I could get a used one, and I'm sure it'd be in great shape. And if I had to do that, that's what I would do. And I do buy refurbished. I shop around, see what I can do. But it's a lot. It's a lot.
Okay, cool. All right, well, I think that's going to end this week's show, unless there's anything else you guys want to talk about with regard to new gear.
We want clarification before we go.
Please.
The 1DX Mark III, it's not a mirrorless camera. It has a mirror. It's a DSLR.
Is it? I thought the story said it was mirrorless.
There was an article on the web somewhere that said this is the best mirrorless camera that only happens to have a mirror. Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a tongue-in-cheek thing or something.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. I appreciate it.
In case anybody wants to complain later, now they can't.
That's right. Darn it. Yeah, so 1DX is still going to be a mirrored camera, so that's why I do wonder what Canon and them are going to come out with next year with regard to their next generation mirrorless cameras, because they came out with the R and the Z6 and the Z7. I'd be interested to see what their second iterations come out with, but I'm pretty happy with the Panasonic S1 series of cameras. I think that they're pretty much tip top, best in class in my opinion. But anyways, that is going to be our show for this week. Thank you, co-hosts, for being on. Is there anything you would all like to throw out there for our listening audience?
Continue watching Around the Lens every Monday morning.
We will see you next week.
That's right. Go to aroundthelens.com, find all links to everything we talked about tonight. If you'd like to support us, you can find all our social media as well as our Patreon. Still trying to get some folks to donate at the $20 level to get the book that we're pushing out there. So please go to Patreon, throw us some bones. We appreciate it. Even $1 would be much appreciated. So that's it for the show. Thank you, guests, thank you, hosts, guest hosts, co-hosts. Thank you, co-hosts, for being on the show and supporting this with me. If there's anything you'd like to see discussed on the show or any guests you'd like to see appear, please let us know. Be sure to tune in next week for the big episode 200 special. We'll have a whole bunch of awesome guests on. It should be a cavalcade of fun and excitement, so be there or be square here on the show at 11 p.m. Korea time, if you're in Korea and watching the show, 9 a.m. Eastern time, so it should be fun and exciting. All right, that's it for this week's show. I am, for Evelyn Hochstein and Ron Hamilton, I am David J. Murphy. This has been episode 199 of Around the Lens, and we are out.
Thanks for listening to Around the Lens. We hope you enjoyed the show. To continue the conversation, head on over to one of our social media outlets such as Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or Twitter. To support the show financially, consider donating to us via Patreon. For show notes from this week's episode and links to everything else we talked about, just go to our website, aroundthelens.com. Finally, if you or someone you know might be a good guest for the show, get in touch with us via email at info@aroundthelens.com.